Black World, Black World, Black World TV.
Welcome to Black World TV. Your news, your views, our voices. Today's broadcast is to talk about the judge who allows the cop to use the Castle Doctrine defense in the trial of Amber Guyger for mistaken apartment killing. The jury in the trial of Amber Guyger, a former Dallas police officer who was charged with murdering her neighbor in his apartment, can consider the Castle Doctrine as part of Guyger's defense, Judge Tammy Kemp ruled Monday, hours before final deliberations in the murder trial. The Castle Doctrine, which was passed by the Texas legislature in 2007, presumes that the use of force is reasonable and necessary when someone is unlawfully and with force entering or attempting to enter your occupied home, car, or place of business, or when someone is committing or trying to commit a crime against you. Amber Guyger, who shot and killed Botham Jean in his own apartment on September 6, 2008, was initially charged with manslaughter, but the district attorney's office subsequently reviewed the case and indicted her on murder charges. Now, I just want to say that I watched a panel and listened to a panel, and I had agreed initially with the panel that the judge seemed like she was going to be very strict, very stern, and by the book and do the right thing. But now it appears that the status quo has taken effect. I recall a black judge in the past who this judge spoke against all white juries, and in doing such, he was disbarred. You know, the powers that be didn't like that, even though he was speaking of the right thing. This racist system that we live under, that we call white supremacy, there's no supremacy whatsoever to it. It's just evil and rotten to the core. But anyways, this video is about how the jury can consider the Castle Doctrine. I read to you what the Castle Doctrine means. In my opinion, Amber Guyger does not, and I repeat, Amber Guyger does not fit into that category, nor should she be able to, the jury able to consider using that argument for Amber Guyger. She has committed a murder against a good black man who deserved to have lived his life. And this case is a prime example of just how all lives really don't matter, because our court systems always show us the truth. Let's take a look at Saturday's court case.
That the Guyger trial will go to the jury on Monday. CBS 11's J.D. Miles was in court today. He has details from the Frank Crowley Courts building.
A surprisingly short Saturday court session after defense attorneys were stymied by the judge, who restricted testimony of their experts to the point that legal analysts say the defense could not use them effectively. Amber Guyger's defense team wanted to call former DISD Police Chief Craig Miller to the witness stand to testify that he thought the actions of the former Dallas police officer on the night she shot and killed Botham Jean were reasonable.
The actions of Amber Guyger are consistent with what I actually saw in working 75 officer-involved shootings.
Prosecutors were allowed to hear some of the testimony before bringing in the jury, and they objected. The judge upheld that objection and prevented Miller and Texas Ranger David Armstrong from testifying in front of the jury that they both believe Guyger's actions were not criminal based on her state of mind at the time.
I think there's experts that'll tell you that with the rulings that she's made yesterday and today, that she's coming across not being fair to both sides.
Criminal defense attorney and former Dallas County prosecutor Pete Schulte has worked on both sides of the legal system and believes the testimony should have been allowed.
And it's shocking to me that some of the information that they're trying to put in front of this jury as experts are being excluded by the court. I think it's a mistake, and I think that it potentially is showing some bias against the defense and for the state.
Schulte believes it's possible the defense could rest its case on Monday based on the rulings. That means the defense case hinges on the credibility of Guyger, who tearfully testified yesterday that she made a terrible mistake after entering Jean's apartment thinking it was hers.
I was scared. Whoever was inside my apartment was going to kill me. And I'm sorry.
The family of Botham Jean left the courthouse this morning knowing that a verdict may be coming soon after a year-long wait for justice. The trial will resume on Monday at 9:30 a.m. The big remaining question will be whether lesser included offenses than murder will be offered as an option to the jury. In Dallas, J.D. Miles, CBS.
W.com. There you can find stories.
Let's be clear that the gentleman that the defense wanted to use, one of the so-called expert witnesses, and I believe his name is Craig. He was a police officer, the white guy. One thing we learn about white supremacy is that they always use a backup, a go-to person who they always put out there front and center, who they use as their mascot to prove their case. Just because some other white person comes forward and says that he believes that Amber Guyger used reasonable force and she was in the right, does not make it right. Let's be clear that even that man who said that is probably a racist himself. And if not, then he shouldn't have a badge. He should not have ever had a badge. And maybe people should be looking at his prior cases that he arrested people on. Because anytime you have human beings making decisions like this, it comes a time where the righteous people of the earth, all human beings, need to step forward and say, no, what you're doing is wrong. And we never see that within white America, the so-called dominant society. We never see that. We never see them doing what's right. They facade and make it look like they are, but it's all a pony show. That's all it is. That's all it ever has been. So when they arrest their white police officers for shooting an unarmed innocent black person, they'll parade them around the cop and say, oh, we'll arrest them, and they arrest them and then they let them out. Or they arrest them and then they charge them, but then they don't charge them in the end. They let them go at sentencing. They get a slap on the wrist. They do things like this. Everything is pure symbolism for them. And this wicked woman, if you will, this Amber Guyger, she should have never had a badge. If you can't make it to your house and determine a bright red carpet in front of the door, and then you go into an apartment and shoot and kill an innocent person, and all you can say is, wait, let me read the headlines. I'm so sorry. Ex-Dallas cop weeps on witness stand at her murder trial. Oh, but here's another headline. Cop who killed neighbor in his home was distracted by sexually explicit calls and texts. And here's one, quote, I shot an innocent man, says former officer on trial for murder. And then here's one, ex-Dallas cop who killed neighbor, quote, I hate myself every single day. Well, you should, because you're alive, while the innocent person that you shot and killed is dead. So you should be. Well, let's take a look at the most recent video. Take a look.
Jurors are allowed to consider the Castle Doctrine in the case of former Dallas police officer Amber Guyger. The judge overruled prosecutors' request to deny the Castle Doctrine. Here is part of their argument in court today.
Now, for Castle Doctrine, the facts that give rise to the presumption are the three parts that one, the defendant has to know or have reason to believe either the victim had unlawfully and with force entered the actor's occupied habitation, knew or had reason to believe that the victim was attempting to remove unlawfully and with force the actor from the actor's habitation, or knew or had reason to believe that the victim was committing or attempting to commit a violent felony. 2, the defendant did not provoke the victim. And 3, the defendant was not otherwise engaged in criminal activity.
Guyger is accused of killing both of John in his own apartment. She claims she thought she was walking into her apartment when she saw him and shot. The Castle Doctrine relates to a person's right to use deadly force to protect their home from intruders without obligation to retreat. Considering it was not Guyger's apartment was the major part of the argument for prosecutors. Closing arguments are now underway in the trial. We will continue to update you on CBSDFW.com. Katie Johnston for CBS 11 News.
So, as we could see, it looks like someone has gotten to this judge, to Judge Kemp, Judge Tammy Kemp. Because as I saw a black woman who was very stern, very assertive, very confident in what she was doing, it now appears that choosing to allow a jury to use the Castle Doctrine when you know good and well that when you read those words as to what it means does not apply to Amber Guyger. She was not in her home, in her occupied home. Amber Guyger was not in her occupied car. Amber Guyger was not in her occupied place of business. Neither was someone committing or trying to commit a crime against her. So none of the Castle Doctrine works. Judge Tammy Kemp, you know this. As a black person, I'm disappointed, but not surprised. We find this kind of behavior from black people in certain positions where they all of a sudden bend or turn a blind eye for white supremacy. It's a damn shame. This is Black World TV. I'm signing off. Hoping you like, share, and if you haven't already, you know what I'm going to ask. So without further ado, peace be unto you. Alaikum salam.